Welcome back to Music Talk. I'm Dave.
I'm Mike.
And this week we're going to go backwards a little bit because we did the Slash CD or album. And we had a couple people tell us we need to go back and check out the Myles Kennedy. Plus, I liked the way he sang so well that I wanted to do it myself. So me and Mike agreed that we need to go check out the one he just put out. So this was put out last year. I want to say mid 2021, maybe. Do you have a year on that one, Mike?
Let me see what I got here. Well,
I want to say it was
I
sometime.
mean, it was. I think it was the later part of 2021. It's like right around October, I believe. But
October.
That they released it.
Okay.
But what the story is, okay.
Well, let me show the album real quick so they'll know what we're talking about.
Right.
So it's Myles Kennedy, the Ides of March, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's got him on the front, and it's not bad. That's not a bad album cover. You know, it's him, got a mountain scene in the back, a little bit of weeds and stuff there. Yeah. You got the back. He's sitting back there chilling on there, about the same area. Then the CD looks like this. Pretty cool. And really, Mike, I like the way he did the inside because you know me, I can't read very well, right? So the first couple pages are a little more difficult because it's kind of small writing. But as you go through, he's got all the words, of course. And as you go through, you can see that the pages get lighter and the words get darker. And I like that. And then over here, you got darker pages with the light words. So it was pretty easy to read this one, honestly. All right. So what was the story?
Well, I mean, the story that I read, and this is on his site. You know, I went to his site and just read this straight off his site. Was okay. He's sitting around and he was afraid of what was going on during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So he went down to Guitar Center, bought an audio interface, sat down, and he proceeded to write these songs. You know.
Yeah.
And there's this one song on there. I don't know if it's Ides of March. I believe it is. That he actually wrote about the riots that were 30 years ago in L.A. and pulled that out because it's so relevant today as compared to what was going on then.
Yeah.
And
could be. I didn't really get into any of that. I didn't see anything on this. I just kind of went through the record, read the words. So
right. But anyway, just to put it, to make a long story short, he was afraid of what was going on with the pandemic, and I think he wrote out from his heart, just trying to make everybody believe we just got to bring it all back together, you know.
Yeah, and a lot of the words that you read, if you read the words at all, it's a lot about that, you know, overcoming and coming back to your thing. You know, he talks a lot about the end of the earth, or not the earth, but the end of time, or whatever. He's got a lot of references of things ending.
Right.
You know, it's another uplifting record. Kind of like what we had with Skillet.
Right.
You know, you had a lot of positivity in it. So
it's a lot of positive stuff here too. And it was written out of fear. And I mean, and that's what you do when you're battling different things. You always come back with an alternate argument, you know, which means, okay, if I'm fearful, then I got to bring some joy in my life, you know,
and to everyone else. Yeah. Right.
You know,
and it didn't have a lot of people. I mean, I was really impressed that Myles did all the guitar work.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, I was shocked when I read that. I'm like, my God, the guy's a killer guitar player.
I really didn't realize that he played as well as he does. You know, I mean, he did the guitars, he did the mandolin, the slide work, everything. I mean, anything with the guitar, he did it. Lap steel, keys, he did keys.
Yep.
So he had on the drums, he had Zia Udine, or Udine, Zia Udine. Right. And then he had Tim Tournier, I guess is how you say it. Tim Tournier or Tournier on bass, who's really like a manager, guitar tech, you know.
I believe he's from down in the Delta or around Baton Rouge or something like that. You know.
Well, he's got a list of people he's worked with too. I don't know if you looked at that. But,
I didn't look at his list, but I did look up. Well, like I say, you know, I did a little bit of searching around, and I got to tell you, I was real impressed with the variety that I found on this album.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, you were hearing Delta blues, you were hearing touches of country, you were hearing, and what I mean by touches of country, I'm talking about a little bit more of the modern day country.
Yeah,
Um,
I was kind of
um,
going with a little bit of Southern rock in a couple areas,
yeah.
you know.
Well,
And
yeah,
we
yeah.
can and we'll talk about a couple of those as we go. But
I
yeah.
think I think the Southern rock line where he's at is kind of blurred. It's just like with the Allman Brothers
Mhm.
in their day.
Yeah.
They were considered Southern rock, but they were really a blues band.
Yeah. Right. They were, yeah, a jazz blues.
Yeah,
Really. So,
yeah.
but all right, well,
So
we'll roll down it real quick and go through some. And the first song, like you were saying earlier, is Get Along,
yep,
and it's
yep,
got a really good hook, a good mix, it had a good solo. I could have done without all the woes that he was putting in there, but people, I don't know why they do that. Ever since the Beatles with the yeah, yeah, yeahs and all the ooh, ooh, oohs and stuff, I've never been a big ooh, ooh, ooh guy. Like when I write a song, I hardly ever have a ooh, ooh, ooh or a whoa, oh, oh, or whatever.
right.
But
Well,
I
I
mean,
think
and they're okay, but I just to me, I just don't want to hear a lot of it.
right, right.
But I did like the song. And then we get to 1,000 words. You had that acoustic intro,
Mm-hmm.
like an acoustic, more than just a guitar though. He had a lot going on in there. You could hear the mandolin in there and all that stuff.
Yep, yep.
But then when he comes in on that verse, man, it was the typical rock verse. The dun, dun, dun. I mean, you hear that over and over again. I mean, the Winery Dogs and Priest, all of them have used that phrasing some way or another. But what I did like about it was the second verse, they chopped it up and they were, um, cutting it a little bit. It wasn't quite the dun dun dun. I mean, it was, they changed it. So I
Yeah,
like that. Of course, had that sub bass, which you get quite a bit on here. You get some below E registers. Had a nice solo. I like the way he brought the intro back with words over top of it
mm-hmm.
after the solo, which I thought was cool. So I like the song a lot, though. I mean, when I say it's typical rock riff, I mean that happens all the time. Doesn't mean I don't like it.
Right.
It just means you've heard it before. But the way they changed it up made it a little different. So I like both songs so far going down the record.
Well, I didn't hear anything that sounded like it was a direct lift off of anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a direct lift. Um, I think it was incidental. Anything that related to anything else, I think it was more an incidental thing than a action that he actually
Yeah.
really lifted something.
And we talk about
And
this a
again,
lot.
yeah, and again, I mean, I'm totally impressed with his vocals.
Mm.
Now the one, Ides of March, I believe, is the one where he's kind of doing that. It's almost a talking thing, a low
At the
register
beginning, yeah.
at the beginning. I didn't like that, but once it gets into the song, I got to say, it kind of erased all those emotions.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like, okay, it's worth
I'll talk
it's
about that one in just a second once we get there because there's something I'm going to say and I want to see if you agree with me on that one.
all right. Go ahead. All
Well, the
right.
third song first is In Stride, which I really, really like this one.
Uh huh.
It's where he has that resonator guitar with the slide.
Right.
He's getting some of that Delta blues you were talking about,
Yep.
but a lot heavy. It was heavier. Heavy verse, great verse. Um, I didn't really care for the walking bass at the very end of it. I thought that they should have just stuck with the song the way it was, because I didn't feel like that walking bass quite fit in there. But man, I really like that song a lot. You know,
Yeah. I really, with all points of the album, I really don't have any argument with anything that was done. And I got to say this: I was really impressed with the drummer. He did
Mhm.
not overplay, and what he played was tasteful, and the sound of his kit was awesome. Now,
Yeah,
I didn't notice a lot of changes in the sound,
right.
but the sound fit every song.
Yeah, and he's a really good drummer too.
He
So
is. I could tell he's using a beat on a, I forget the name of the song now. It was a slower song, and where he was opening the hi-hat, I'm like, wow, that's a really nice idea to open it on that upbeat instead of the normal upbeat.
Yeah, that one was on "Wake Me When It's Over," and I actually have a note on that too about the hi hat work.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I thought
Yeah,
it was great because it was different. You know,
yeah,
it gave him a little bit of a signature
yeah.
on to me. You know, I mean,
So we go to number 4 real quick, and this was "Ides of March." This is the one with the acoustic intro you were talking about, where he kind of talks a little bit, and
yeah,
it's kind of eerie a little, right? But then when he goes into the verse, it reminded me of if you took the Santana's Europa and put words to it.
okay,
You know what I'm saying?
I can see that. Yeah, I
Because
can
I
see.
mean, when he does that vocal part, it just reminds me of how Europa is, and then it
Right.
breaks into that drum break, with the rim shot and everything. But when once it got into the song, there was a lot of like Iron Maiden, Queensryche type Dio vocal work going on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was really, really interesting because it took a lot of turns. This song, it had a really nice bluesy solo, which I really liked. Then it had that harder outro solo in it, and it ends the same way it began. But the vocal work again was stellar. It was I think it was like over 7 minutes. But the funny thing is, the long as this song was, it kind of went by fast because I
Right.
didn't,
Right.
once, it was over by the time you were like, I mean, you were into the song, so you really weren't paying attention to the time. And then when it was over, you're like, man, that was 7 minutes,
Yeah.
you
Well, the
know?
thing is too is like, okay, all the references you're using. See, once I got past the intro, the song really, it really lifted me up. I mean, listening to it because it was well put together.
Mhm.
And the thing is, while I was listening to it, I really wasn't thinking about referencing it to anybody else because it was so well put together.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, granted, those references are there, and I hear them as you mention them. I hear those references,
Yeah.
but he is a victim of the time when he was introduced as an artist in
Yeah.
music. So
Yep.
there you go. I mean, all
But
these bands were around him at that time. I mean,
and
he's a product of Alter Bridge. I mean,
and it's not a knock by any means
no,
because I
no,
love hearing the Iron Maiden, Queensryche, Dio
right,
sound and stuff, and with the
right.
heavy guitar and bass and drums in there. I mean, you're bringing me back to the stuff I grew up with. So it's like, I love it, man. So
Any day over Metallica.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I can't, that's another subject.
We know how much you love Metallica. They're
Well,
they're your
actually,
second favorite band to Guns N' Roses.
no, I like Metallica because of the fact
They
that
turned the
it
world
forced
around.
it forced Guns N' Roses to show what a butthead Axl Rose is. I was going to say something else.
It always goes back to Axl Rose, don't it?
It does. Well, he's a worm, man. I mean, the
Well,
dirt's falling off of him as he's up there slithering. I mean,
so
anyway.
we'll move on from Axel because we don't want to overshadow what we got going on here. But it
Uh,
brings me to the next song, which is odd because that you started talking about. I guess that kind of helped with it too. But "Wake Me Up When It's Over." All right, it kind of sounds like a Guns N' Roses influenced song. So this is where he was hanging around with Slash a little bit, and some of that rubbed off on him. And this is the one with the hi hat, and it has the 16th bass drum notes. You know what I mean?
right. Mhm.
So what I was thinking was, man, he's bringing that hi hat lift, and he's also doing all that other footwork, which is very difficult.
Yeah.
And that's what caught my ear on this song. I was like, man, that's not an easy task to lift that hat at the same time that he's doing that other footwork too.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. I mean, the normal thing is on the straight up upbeat, you lift the
Mhm.
hi hat as you're going on the downbeat with your bass drum.
Exactly.
But he did the upbeat, the bass drum, and then lifted the hi hat, and it's like, wow, I never thought of putting it together that way.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I mean, there was definitely something going on there that caught my ear. I'm like, man, that's not an easy thing what he's doing there. And
Right.
that one has solid bass drums. You know, it's just a good rocker, really.
It's
Was
kind
that
of like a polyrhythm when you think about it, with the way things are laid down, the snare, the bass drum, and the hi hat, and it's like it all works out when you're doing a 12 bar blues change,
Yeah.
which is what they were doing.
Hmm.
So it wound up doing it was a wide open triplet, and
Yeah.
the triplet existed in 4 bar counts. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
a quarter note count 3 times over. So
Yeah.
first one snare, second 4 beats bass drum, third 4 beats he's lifting the hat, and it's
Yeah.
like it's just such an odd thing to do. It's like wow.
It is. Yeah. So then we get to number 6, which is Love Rain Down. This was the acoustic ballad, you know, had that acoustic intro, had a good old rock ballad. Um, this one is the only time where there's a hint of a Steve Perry sound to me. It's the backup, the harmony vocals had that slight, it was almost like Steve Perry was singing with him, but only the backup part, the harmony part, because his normal voice was doing the rest. And then it had that one register that he hits. I don't know what it is or what note or part of the chord that he's using, but when he hits it, it has that Steve Perry sound.
Exactly. And I looked long and hard through this album. I could not find the references to the Steve Perry influences the way I did with Slash's the way
Exactly.
Slash's album. I
And
mean, it was
you
all over
know,
Slash's album.
yeah, it is. And you know what I was thinking is because I felt like Myles wasn't trying to be Myles on Slash's album. He was trying to be Slash's singer, right? It's odd in a way, but if he wasn't trying to be Myles.
Well, I mean, okay, look at it this way. If you're Jeff Beck and you're doing your own album,
Hmm.
you're Jeff Beck
Yep.
or Steve Vai.
Right.
But if you're working for Frank Zappa or if you're working for whoever,
Yep.
well, then you're Frank Zappa's guitar player.
Exactly. Exactly. And
You know,
that's kind of what I felt like.
right.
Because after hearing this album, it makes me. I I'll talk about that later after we finish running down.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway,
I think it's more a producer thing than anything
I
else.
think that's very possible too. So then we go to number 7, and it's "Tell It Like It Is." This was the typical boogie woogie style song you had going on. Had that slide riff that kind of reminded me of like a southern rock thing.
Yep.
With the little kind of Georgia Satellite, Black Crows, you name it.
Yep.
It had
Yep.
that boogie sound, but it was much heavier, honestly. But one thing about it, man, I really loved this vocal phrasing on this because it wasn't the typical boogie vocal type sound. You had the boogie music, but his vocal work was fantastic fantastic on this one. So it changed it up. Now, the one thing I do wish they would have done on this one, and also the next one, which was called Moonshot, which is another rock ballad, right?
Uh-huh.
And it has had that great chorus, but it also has this kind of a shuffle going on here. But the shuffle gets drowned out. You don't quite hear all the ghost notes, but you do hear a lot of the hi-hat work. And the thing is, on these last two, this one and the last one, "Tell It Like It Is" and "Moonshot," I wish that they would have changed the snare sound just slightly because it
Yeah.
had that deep, and the bass drum sound too, because you had that same deep bass drum where I felt like if they would have changed it up a hair on a couple of these songs, you could have heard what he was doing on the drums better
Yeah. Yeah.
because he
Well,
was getting lost to the effect, right?
I think they could have just brought him out front a little bit more because I'm gonna tell you what he was doing. Okay. When the song was getting heavier, he was doing more of the John Bonham type thing.
Yeah.
But then behind the vocal work, he was doing more of the Rosanna shuffle thing.
Especially on Moonshot.
Yeah,
That was the shuffle.
right. But when he got heavier, if you listen to it because I use that Bonham thing a lot when I'm playing blues.
Right.
And when it got heavier, he was using the Bonham approach, and when it got lighter, he fell back into the Jeff Porcaro version.
Right.
It's like I loved it. I mean, I just wish they'd have brought it out front more.
Me too, because I felt like the snare wasn't, you weren't hearing the ghost notes on the snare like you needed to. You know, because they work so well with
Again,
the hi-hat snare.
I think the engineer covered it up.
Could be.
I
Yeah.
think the engineer or producer or on the mix down, they just backed it out a little bit, and I wish they hadn't have. But I know what was there. I
I
know what was going on,
I
and
guarantee you see him do this live, it's going to be just like watching Rosanna.
yeah,
Rosanna Shuffle. Because
yeah.
I mean, I was like, man, that's such a great shuffle. Why are they drowning it out with those effects?
And I'm gonna tell you, I'm very jealous of that too because I could do that shuffle a little bit like I could do it to Babylon Sisters,
Yeah.
but I can't do it to Rosanna.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. And I really, when I heard it, I was like, dude, he's nailing that Rosanna Shuffle, man.
Yep.
So then we get to number 9. This is Wanderlust, another one I liked a lot. This is the acoustic ballad. Kind of reminded me a little bit of a trainish type song, something you hear Train do.
Yeah.
Had that typical slide riff in the background. It was a very familiar sounding song, but I really, really liked it, man, for some reason,
Got that government mule influence too, I mean,
yeah, I really dug it. And then we get to number 10, and this is Sifting Through the Fire. And when it first came on, I thought it was Poco's Call It Love. And then the second time it got to that part, I thought it was Jessica from the Allman Brothers.
right. Yeah.
Because, I was just waiting for the
Right.
but again, it was only that
Familiarity.
that word.
See, I've only had one less beer than you.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't even had much. I never can say that word. If y'all go back then a few podcasts, you'll hear me screw that word up all the time. So I'm gonna just start pointing the mic when I want to say that word, and let him do it.
And if I stumble, then I've had too much to drink.
Yeah, so that's how it works. And this one was a pretty good song. It had this really cool break at the end, which I wish they would have added it earlier into the song because I love that break so much that it broke up the other familiar stuff that was going on. So if they would have brought that break in one more time in the earlier part of the song, it would have been great.
Right.
But I did like the song. Then we get to the last song, which was called Worried Mind. Probably a lot about what you were talking about, the story of the album. I like the song. It's another slow ballad, but I did not like the placement of it on the album. I wish they wouldn't have made this the last song.
Should have been about the third song.
That's exactly what I thought too, because if you'd have ended the song with Sifting Through the Fire, you'd have left me wanting some more.
Right.
Because I mean, that was like kicking me, man. I'm like, yeah. And then I got to Worried Mind, and then it mellowed me back down again.
Well, sifting, and we'll get to that in a minute, but Sifting Through the Fire to me means the battle's over. Let's get it together.
Yep.
Let's sift through all this bullshit that's around us and march on with life.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what this album's about anyway.
And
The
so
whole
that
album.
it should have been the ending of the album. And I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. 10 would have been the best ender for sure. And like you were saying, if Worried Mind would have been like number 3, where they had like 4 or 5 songs that kind of were not similar sounding, but faster paced.
Well, had the same mindset, kind of the same mindset as far as theory behind the lyrics. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been a perfect breakup somewhere around 3, like you said. And that the album would have been pretty much laid out perfectly at that point.
Right.
But overall, I'm gonna say I love this a lot more than I like Slash. I think this album is way better than the Slash one.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I gotta agree with you. I think Myles Kennedy really, and this is kind of off of his website too. The author of the bio on there was talking about this really showed all sides of Miles Kennedy,
Mhm.
and it showed you his true personality.
Yeah.
And I got to say, comparing this to what he did with Slash, to me, Slash's stuff was more of a commercial approach.
Yeah.
This one here, to me, struck me as being from the heart. And like I said, I looked long and hard to find any references to Steve Perry from Journey as far as, does he sound like it? I didn't really hear a whole lot at all. I
Mhm.
mean, it never, I said something to my wife about it. I said, well, when I was explaining to her who Miles Kennedy was, and then she realized who I was talking about when I talked about the references to Steve Perry.
Mhm.
And I just got to say, man, I'm totally impressed. I did not know he was that much of a guitar player.
I didn't either. That threw
I
me.
thought
That threw me off when I
I
read it.
thought he was just a vocalist that knew how to play, backing rhythm and stuff, and
Me too.
just had to do what he had to do, as far as like a 4-piece bar band or something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say too is I know I'm not a big I'm not a big study of Miles Kennedy. So in other words, I don't know all the material he did with everybody else. I really don't know much about what he did with Alter Bridge. I have heard some of their stuff. I just never really got into it that much. But from the stuff I've heard of Miles, this is the best that I've ever heard him
Yeah.
on this record. Now, I'm sure we'll have people tell us that you got to go back and listen to this and that and the other. And I hope they do. And we will go back and listen to other stuff, especially if you suggest it to us. But to me, to this date, of all the stuff that I've heard of Miles, this is the best I've ever heard him sing, and really didn't know he played guitar so well. So I was super impressed with that myself. I felt
Yep.
like the bass and drums worked well together. I don't
Yep.
know that they're a rhythm section, so to speak, but they did well as the rhythm section. I didn't feel like it was lacking. Drums were great. They sounded great. The bass
Yep.
had a definite sound. It didn't get muddied out. I mean, you heard the notes of the bass. Even when they went sub low, it still had a nice shape to it, the bass did. Where
Yep.
sometimes we hear it and the bass just sounds like there's some bass there. You don't know what they're playing because there's
Right.
no definition, right?
Right.
So I thought the whole thing was recorded well, produced well. Miles's voice was fantastic. I
Yep.
think the songs were better than what I've heard of in the past because I had stuff that still sticks in my head right now. Like when we listen to Slash, I couldn't hang on any of those choruses. I can't remember any of the songs on that record. But on this one,
Well,
there's like 6 songs that I'm still singing in my head right now.
well,
Sifting through the fire. How many times have you hummed that in your head after you heard it?
yeah, and I gotta be fair. I gotta come clean with the fact that I've listened to this album probably about a half dozen times at least.
Mhm.
But my first 4 or 5 times listening to it, it was just background noise. And of course, every time I put it on, it started off, the Amazon version started off with the talking,
Ides
you
of
know,
March.
into Ides of March.
Yeah.
So I pretty much was like, well, I'm losing interest.
Yeah.
But then I really sat down here the past couple of days and listened to it probably about 3 or 4 times. And I got to tell you, I'm very sorry that I took a surface value on it
Hmm.
from the Ides of March. And like I said, even when you got past that intro, Ides of March kicked ass.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
and I didn't hate that intro because I mean, there's a lot of stuff like those older 80s metal bands used to do a lot of that talking and
and
stuff. So I was okay with that. I mean, I've listened to it many times, and to me, it brought this eeriness about it, you know. And I know the song Ides of March probably doesn't really have anything to do with March, but this whole album felt like a March kind of album to me, you know. And we're listening to it in April, obviously, but it's got that wintry type feel sometimes to me. I don't know. It's just something about it. It's kind of like the Wind and Wuthering from Genesis. When I listen to that, I think about wintertime. I don't know. Some albums do that to me. But this one, I'll listen to it probably about a dozen times. It's grown on me more every time I listen to it. And when you really start getting into it and listening to it, you hear these great things going on. I liked his guitar solos, man. I mean, they weren't just blasting notes of, of a scale that he knows, they actually had feeling. The choruses had nice hooks. There's stuff that you can remember after you heard the song. And I think he nailed it, man. For a solo record where he wrote everything on it, normally you get a lot of redundancy, right? Here you got 11 songs, maybe 2 or 3 sound similar, but every time there was something different going on, you know.
It's just, yeah, I was very happy, especially the last couple times I listened to the album. I was like, wow.
Mhm.
When I started understanding what was going on, I was doing some research and everything. I was like,
Yeah.
oh God, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And the words
And
too.
the thing is the bass player and the drummer are his rhythm section, and that's one thing he talked about in his when you go on his website, you can read that little excerpt there.
Mhm.
Talks about he's sitting down, he wrote all this stuff during the pandemic, and then decided, well, it's time to record it. So he grabbed his rhythm section, talking about the bass player and the drummer. They headed down to Florida, and they recorded this album.
Yeah. Yeah, and it shows, because you could hear how tight they are.
Hell
You
yeah,
know.
oh yeah,
And,
and if you and I've got to tell you something too, that there is VIP tickets for sale on this tour for $150.
really?
Yeah, you get to
Is
go
he is he
backstage.
touring by himself right now?
No, he's gonna be touring with the band
Well, that's
doing.
what I mean. He's the Miles Kennedy band.
Yeah, well, yeah, whatever you want to call it, I
It's not.
mean,
He's not with Alter Bridge
no,
or
no,
Slash. Yeah.
he's gonna be touring. Go to his website, you'll see, and the very front page, $150 VIP tickets.
I wonder if he's going to bring a rhythm guitarist with him.
Probably. I
Yeah.
would imagine so. And I
Yeah.
would imagine too, for the fact that he's probably going to have to dig up one or two songs from Alter Bridge and probably something off of Slash and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it's going to
And
take
he's
him
got
out.
another solo album, right? Doesn't he have another one?
There is another one out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
remember the name of it. I haven't listened to it yet, but
Yeah.
I'm going to.
I know for a fact the drummer was on the first one, but I don't know if the bass player was. He probably was.
I
I
think
don't
he
know.
was
Yeah.
because they were called his rhythm section.
Yeah.
So whether he was there or not, he is there now.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get. You
Yeah.
know.
And that'd be cool. I'd like to go see him. I'd rather see him by himself than with Alter Bridge or Slash for sure. So, well,
Well,
anyway,
I got a feeling with the price of these tickets, it's going to be in a medium sized arena type
smaller
atmosphere, probably
venue. Yeah.
about 2,000 people at the most,
Yeah.
And
Hopefully they're even smaller so I can catch them around here somewhere.
yeah, um, out here a lot of the acts are doing the casinos. I hate that crap,
Yeah.
but
Whatever pays the bills, man.
yeah, but I just can't see paying $150 to walk into a theater room in a casino.
Right. I know. I agree.
It just is like to me, it's like, okay, you're charging me going to the library.
Right.
I mean, come on. But with
Well,
all the money they're making, they should be putting their shows on for free.
right. That's true. In a casino for sure. Let the casino pay the band.
Exactly. You want to make money, put a dance floor out there and charge them for every dance.
That's right. Well, this
That's
one,
old
man, I'll
school.
tell you, I'm giving it an 8-8 because I liked it. I liked it a lot. I
Yeah,
thought it was best thing that I've heard from Miles Kennedy. So everybody can tell us, we're wrong or whatever they want to tell us. But so I gave it an 8-8. What are you thinking on this?
I'm thinking, and I'm going to put it right up there with Silk Sonic, but I'm going to go with a 9 on it because I
Nine
was,
zero.
yeah, I was at once I really settled down and listened to it, I was that enamored with it. I was like, the musicianship was out of this world. And
It was
Miles Kennedy did not sound like Steve Perry the way
no.
he did
He
in
sounded he
Slash.
sounded like Miles Kennedy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sang his ass off. I liked the different variety that he put on
Yep.
through this album. I mean, he musically they changed things up.
And I
Even though it
think,
was in even though it was in a hard hitting rock mode,
yeah,
they changed things up.
yeah.
And
And he was himself on this
yeah,
record.
right.
He was doing the
Exactly.
songs he wrote the way he wanted to do it, and it's great. So
Yeah.
so
I
anyway, Myles Kennedy, Ides of March. I wish we would have did it when it first came out. I'm glad we did it now, though, in a way, because we got to hear him with Slash, and then we got to go back and hear him on this. So I actually like this a lot. I liked Slash okay, but I wasn't real, big on it. I just think he blows it away with this record. So anyway,
Yeah, I got to agree with that. I'm I mean, I am definitely going to check in and dig deeper into Miles Kennedy.
yeah. And I mean, even the guitar playing, I liked it better than what was on the Slash stuff.
And what I was going to say earlier when we were talking about his vocal stuff and everything, he reminded me more of an Ian Gillan
Yeah,
with
you're right.
his approach.
Yeah. Especially when he gets into that high note registers where it's
Yeah,
still
I mean,
solid, man.
yeah, solid as a rock and just able to throw that tremolo in there and just
And
go for it, man.
the thing is, he's not even that young to be hitting these notes.
No, he's been around for about 30 years now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. And he still sounds great. So
Yep. Well, it
so
goes
he's
to
probably
show
taking care of himself,
he's probably hard of hearing wearing them in-ear monitors, but
Yeah, maybe.
I hate those things.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Myles Kennedy, Ides of March. I gave it an 8.8. Mike gave it a 9. Very good record. Go check this one out. Best I've heard of Myles Kennedy until y'all tell me to go check out something else. And then I'll come back later and say, yeah, y'all were right. That was maybe one of the better efforts. But to me, I thought this was great. So till next time, y'all stay safe.
Peace out and listen to the music.